Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker, and I'm your host. And today we are going to fight, we are going to conflict. We are going to talk about conflict and how we can do better about managing conflict. And I have a true expert here with us today. I'm so excited to have Karin with me. We actually have spoken on some stages together, and I've got to see her presentation, and it's really fantastic. And she helps human-centered leaders find clarity in uncertainty, drive innovation, and achieve breakthrough results. She's the founder and CEO of Let's Grow Leaders, a global leadership development firm known for practical tools and techniques for human-centered leaders. She's a former Verizon wireless executive with more than 2 decades of experience in sales, customer services, and human resources. And that's how she can talk about this stuff. She's known for growing courageous leaders, building great cultures, and inspiring high-performance teams. And finally, I'll just say that she's also an award-winning author of 5 books, including Courageous Cultures, How to Build Teams of Micro-Innovators, Problem Solvers, and Customer Advocates, Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. What to say next to distress the workday, build collaboration, and calm difficult customers. And she's also the host of a popular LinkedIn show called Asking for a Friend. So without further ado, Karin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Penny, thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
And you are the expert around culture and conflict. Is that because you have so much conflict?
Yes. It's interesting. You're familiar with our Courageous Cultures work. And our publishers of Courageous Cultures, HarperCollins, came to us and said, you know what? We are really seeing a dynamic that we think the world is really shifting and changing. We're seeing a rise in workplace conflict. Would you guys take a look and do some research, write a book, give us some practical tools and techniques, because we think the world needs this now. So we actually weren't ready to go set out and write a new book, but we thought, well, let's see. And so we built the World Workplace Conflict and Collaboration Survey, and we've surveyed over 5,000 people in 46 countries to ask a couple of questions. One, is workplace conflict getting better or worse? Let's test that hypothesis since the last couple of years. And if so, why? Mm-hmm. And then what are people thinking in terms of their experiences with conflict? And what advice would they give to their former self if they were faced with their biggest conflict again? And so the short answer is 70% of the people are experiencing either the same or more or significantly more conflict in the workplace. And a variety of reasons, right? We are in a cocktail of stress, right? We have the coming out of the pandemic where everyone chose their bubble, which created a weird us and them, even around friends and family. Yeah. Then we have, of course, all of the social unrest. We have the conflict that's going on in the world. We have the shift to remote work. We have people working in matrixed organizations, more global organizations, more than ever before. And all of that is creating a conflict cocktail. And people are not equipped with the tools and techniques that they need to have these conversations. So what we're seeing is more and more people are avoiding them. And so of the 30% that said conflict was getting better, what we heard was, well, yeah, now I'm working at home, so I just don't engage. Or I quit the job that was creating all the conflict, or I changed to another department. So for those folks, it wasn't even actually that conflict was, for most of them, was getting better. It was only a small percentage who said, I got better at communication, or we really worked through it. And so what we really want to do is help people. I know you're all about real productivity and streamlining your work and spending your time doing the right things. And if you can engage in healthy, productive conflict, right, that is where you're going to save time, have more creativity, more
Absolutely.
innovation.
Absolutely. I mean, hello. People think that it means I'm going to add another tool or I'm going to be more productive when I can do this. But if you can't communicate, communication is the biggest productivity drain that there is when things don't work smoothly, when there's a lack of trust or any of those things. So, absolutely, it is a huge driver. What I want to come back to is you talked about that it's getting worse and that there's a lot of avoidance. So we really don't know how to handle it. We're not doing the things. I want to come back to that point about stress, right? Because when just think of it, how you feel when you lose a night's sleep and you're dealing with different things that are going on, you're cranky, your whole threshold just goes way down. And you just, the minute somebody says anything, so I think there's a lot of that is that there's dealing with ourselves and just getting the rest and reducing the stress. And then there's also that communication piece. Do you have any sort of like statistics around how much of it is stress and how much of it is communication?
Yeah, so stress was in the top 3. And one of the things that is the interesting thing about stress is exactly to your point. The stress makes it harder. We're more fragile, right? So what we could have just been shook off when we're in an exhausted state or when we are dealing with so many other pressures, it's easy to trigger. Exactly what you're saying.
Totally.
The interesting thing that we also found in the research was that stress was the outcome of conflict. So what is the cost of this conflict to the organization? Stress, right? And so now we've got more stress, therefore more conflict. And then the outcome of having conflict is more stress.
Right.
And
it's like anxiety, right? You get anxious of being anxious. So it's like that loop that you're in that you have to figure out.
Yeah,
how to get out.
Penny, it's so interesting. One of the things I do with one of our clients is I go down, they have a time where they bring all of their senior leaders together. And I basically am available for coaching and team building and looking strategy sessions. So I'm hanging out, right? I'm hanging out for 3 days. And this guy burst into my little office my temporary office that I have there. And he goes, Karin, David, who is my co-author and husband, just sent me an email. And I see you have a new book coming out because it's in his signature. Do you have that book right now? Because I need it right this minute. And I'm like, so, all right, well, no, it's not out yet. But what's your problem, right? And he explains. But then what was so interesting, and he just had a communication challenge with one of his coworkers, which in the midst of it, he just needed to step back and think it through. And I said, I'll give you some of the techniques from the book. Let's do that. But the interesting thing was, as I watched him exhale, he said, I have lost sleep over this problem for an entire month, right? I wish I had talked to you a month ago. And so that's an example of how the stress can snowball and then it becomes something even bigger.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some conflict tips, right? Because like he said, right, he's been losing sleep and he just needed the ability to what I call take a reset moment.
Yeah.
And step back, get some perspective on the situation, and then have a concrete question or tool or something that can help him to realign that communication. So, what are some tips that can help people when they're in some challenging conflict?
Yeah. So, the first place I would start, and I love your reset. And part of that reset is getting grounded yourself, right? It's getting your mind, as my kickboxing instructor would say, get your mind right, But I think that's where I see a lot of people, they talk themselves out of having the conversation. So the first question is, why does what you have to say matter? What's at stake if you stay silent, right? What is on the other side of this? How will you feel if what you say is heard and listened to and you can collaborate on a better outcome? How will you feel when that is accomplished? And all of those simple questions can really help get you the courage you need to have this conversation. And then from there, we talk about 4 C's. So first is really connection. Are we connected as human beings? And of course, it's easier to go into a conflict with someone if you think they have their best interest at heart. If you are connected, So building that along the way with the people that you're working with is important, but it's also important if you're in what we'll call an ACE, an acute conflict emergency, right? How do you step back and connect at a human level first?
I want to add something to that because I always say that I learned this the hard way is you think that you have rapport with someone and you think that you have a human connection, and then you get into this conflict. And I always say that rapport is in the moment. That connection is in the moment. You have to reset it. Sorry, using that word again, but you have to reconnect before you can go through that, the rest of that conversation and everything. So I love that, reminding people that just because you think you have a connection doesn't mean in that moment that it counts. You have to reconnect.
Yeah, I love it. And just simple things like, hey, I really care about you and the work that we're doing together. And I'm sure that we can work together to find a good outcome here. Just gentle. And it's also in your tone of voice as you're connecting. If you can go into a conflict calm, even if they're escalated, if you can come in and say, hey, look, I know we both want the best for this. What do you think we can do here? Right. And so you connect. Yeah. So that's the first is connection. And then it's clarity, which is, and this is a big one. What does a successful outcome look like for you? Because if you go into a conflict or if you're looking to try to better collaborate, it's really good to start with knowing what they think is success looks like. Because if you're trying to accomplish something in this direction and they're trying to accomplish something in the other direction, well, let's talk about that because it's not what we're doing, it's where we're headed that we've got to have the conversation about.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Reconnect to that common purpose so that you're at least on that clarity of what it is that you're working towards that's the same instead of, like you said, in two different places.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does this look from your perspective? Or as another phrase. So what does success look like? What does this look like from your perspective? And so then you've got connection at a human level. Then you've got clarity. Are we aligned with what success looks like? And then it's curiosity. And, from my other word, like I'm all about showing up curious. But it's curious about really being open to someone else's perspective, right? Yeah. And curious about what's actually happening and curious about what a creative solution might look like for this. So really showing up and saying, hey, I care about you. This is what we want. What do you think we could do? What are some ideas that you have? And then showing up there. And then the final one is commitment. And then this is what we see a lot of people miss, Penny, in these conflicts, is they think they work through a solution, but they don't do what we call schedule to finish and say, okay, so who's going to do what by when? How will we know? When are we going to talk about whether this solution is working? So they generally say, okay, so we're going to try to do better on getting our deliverables done on time. And that is not a commitment.
Right. And that's so wishy-washy, right? There's just no clarity to that as a closing. So absolutely. But because it's avoidance, because we avoid, I think, even though you get so far, there's still that sort of resistance that's there with it still being a conflict, even though it's not a conflict anymore if you've already gone through those 3 C's, right?
Yeah. And to know that these are all tools, and one might say, well, your book is of powerful phrases. Well, can you really script conflict? Right? I mean, I would ask that question if I picked it up. And
it's a good question. I think you can.
It's funny because obviously we can't get, and we have all kinds of scenarios. What to do with a micromanager? What if somebody steals your credit, right? These are ideas. And those phrases might work in your context, but it's more about encouraging the conversation. And then you can say, all right, let me try a variation of this or use it exactly. But we did this because so many of our clients will be like, Karin, can you just give me some words? Like, I get I need to go talk to this person, but if it were you, what words would you use? And it's a start.
Well, I think it's super helpful because when emotions are high, our intellect is low, right? So in the moment, we may not be able to find those words, that question. So, but if you gave me something that I kind of looked at ahead of time, or I rehearsed, or I knew that here's a set of questions that could help me in these types of scenarios that I might often get myself in, I could remember it in that moment. Okay, I could ask this question. And even just searching for a question helps you to sort of ebb off the emotional side of thing and say, okay, I know there's something I could say here that would help to resolve this. And even if it's not, like you said, exactly what you gave them, they're searching for that question, which gets them in the place of curiosity, right?
Yeah. And then there's some like really good generic ones that you can just have it. You're like, tell me more.
Oh, right.
Right. That's easy to remember.
Right. Exactly. Just let them get it all out. Let them get it all out. And then, and then they feel heard, hopefully.
Yeah. What do you suggest we do next? Right? Like these are, you can use it on almost any scenario. It doesn't mean you need to accept it, right? But it's taking the initiative to be proactive in the conversation.
Right. But tone matters, right? And where you come from, as you said, in your space. So I could say, well, what do you think we should do next?
Right.
That might not be a good way to phrase that. So I want to bring back to what you said is that first point of getting grounded and getting into curiosity so that you're coming from a place of commitment to this person to work it out versus we're going to see who's right here.
Yeah. It's really hard to be furious and curious at the same time.
Ooh, that's a good phrase. You're right. It is hard to be furious and curious.
And then the other thing is you're not going to resolve every conflict. And so then you have choices to make. In our research, we had verbatims and we read through all of these verbatims and we asked people, what would they do faced with this conflict again? And it was interesting. 55% wish they had showed up calmer. I would be more patient. I would be more calm. And then 21% said, I wished I would have talked about it or talked about it sooner. And they avoided the conversation. And because they avoided the conversation, it escalated or it never got resolved. And then there were stories of people facing really horrible things. And they said, you know what? I had to walk away. And sometimes that's the answer. And we talk about it in the book. How do you decide when to quit a conflict? Because you don't need to stay. And I will often, when people will call me and on asking for a friend, people tell me the horrible, horrible stories. Some of those I don't publish, right? Is that it just turns into me helping them. But I always say, well, why do you stay? Right? If your boss is really a toxic courage crusher and the whole culture is at crushing your courage, why do you stay? And I think that's an important question for people.
What's an answer? Why do people stay? Just so people, maybe there's leaders here that need to be aware of why people stay, even though they shouldn't.
I think sometimes people stay because of inertia and they're like, well, it's going to take a lot of energy and time and I'm already stressed and I'm too tired and I don't want to. But that's when you see that's when the quiet quitting stops because you're not staying with enthusiasm. You're staying and hunkering down just to survive. And you're not going to get the innovation and energy you need from people at that point either.
Absolutely. Well, these are great, great tips. Thank you for sharing that. I wish we had more time on the show today, but actually you dropped a lot of nuggets and for people to just be able to be just a little bit better in taking that, having the courage to have that conversation and then de-escalate it from conflict to conversation. Is there anything that I didn't ask you yet that you feel would be really important for the listeners to bring that piece to a close?
I would just love to leave your listeners with just grounding yourself in why your conversation matters because reading 5,000 verbatims of people's regrets, saying, I wish I would do this again differently. I would do it differently. Most of the time is, I wish I had said something sooner. And so that's my hope for people is that they will know that it's worth it, that their voice matters, and that they can be the one to initiate the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How can people reach you and get information about the new book that's coming out?
Yeah. So our website is Let's Grow Leaders. And the new book is called Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict. What to say next to de-stress the workday, build collaboration and calm difficult customers. And you can find all of that information on our website. And of course, on LinkedIn, I love to connect with people there. And I'm Karin with an I, Karin, Hurt.
And when is the book coming out?
Not until May. But we're starting to release the findings of the research right now. So the timing is really good.
Fantastic. Well, let me leave you with one question because I do like to ask this question because I just love the variation of answers. What's your definition of productivity and why?
Productivity is getting the right things done well.
Awesome. Bam, right? Clarity. Quick sentence. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I love your content. I love your series, Asking for a Friend. So I appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom.
Oh, Penny, it's been absolutely my pleasure. And I'm excited about your new book coming out too. So when that hits, we'll have you on Asking for a Friend.
That sounds great. And thank you all for being here. I know you took a lot away from the conversation today. And just remember that you can't be furious and curious at the same time. I think those were great words said by Karin. And really, you got 4 C's in there that you can take away and remember. And in May, you'll be able to go get Karin's book. But you want to, A, stay connected. You want to enter the conversation with clarity and curiosity, and then end it with a clear commitment. So remember those 4 C's, and you'll already be in a better place anytime you have to engage in a conflict. And by the way, this isn't just at work. You can use this also with your kids if you're a parent, with your parents if you have older parents, or whatever. In any situation, I believe that these are tried and true that go across different kinds of contexts. So with that, my name is Penny Zanker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next show. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.